Hi, and welcome to another episode of Get Tech Smart. I am your host, Flo Nicholas, CEO and tech startup founder, and just a real tech nerd. So I'm really excited for this episode because every episode I just really try to talk about something new that's happening in the tech sector. And one sector that is on the rise right now with billions of dollars being funded and invested in new tech startup companies and to is sustainability technology innovations. And other people call it green tech, which is just trying to find new ways to pretty much decrease the human impact on the environment. So today I have awesome guests to you, a father and son duo. Both are electrical engineers, and one of the guests, you probably might know him, Brett.
Thank you.
One of our town selectmen right here in Hudson, and his father, Paul. So welcome both to the show. I'm really excited to dive right in and talk about all the things that you're seeing when it comes to sustainability. You and I were both we see each other because I'm on the library trustee. Yep. And one of the things that you recently worked with the director is LED.
Yes, and so thank you for having us here first and foremost. And to that example, I think that was one of the first but very successful projects that Hudson has done. And now I had really no part in this. I simply looked at some of the data and took what they had and then graphed it to really see what the value was. The overall project was at the library. They actually funded all new LED replacement light bulbs, a fairly simple task that everyone is aware of doing. But after graphing their electrical bills for 3 to 4 years, and comparing delivery with their charge, as well as federal and state kickbacks for that energy efficient project, they were able to save somewhere in the ballpark of $12,000 over 3 years, which practically paid for the upgraded system. So it was a very simple but effective project that saved the taxpayers of Hudson money. So it was excellent.
Now, I mean, I read about all that you did with Linda, and the cost savings is absolutely phenomenal. And one of the things that I hear a lot when you talk about any type of technology, and I always ask my guests this, is people always think tech and they think expensive. That the average, citizen cannot afford it. But let's just talk about, for the average person, we talked about the impact of the change and switching to LEDs at the library. How can an ordinary person, a citizen right here in Hudson, a resident, what little small changes can they make in their own homes?
And that's a great question. And to kind of continue with that example, I mean, it's as simple as if you can afford it, you can buy LEDs. And I think for the most part, incandescent lights are almost not even being sold anymore. Almost all LEDs at your basic big box stores are selling LEDs. For some reason, if you're redoing an entire house, and that adds up to be quite expensive, there are state programs, and I think federal programs, that will actually help come in and either subsidize some of that cost or pay you back to make the overall burden on the homeowner much less and realistically affordable. I've had 2 homes now, and I have deliberately gone through the entire home and replaced everything with LEDs. It's been a couple years now, but I remember when I first did it, it got to the point where my electric bill was somewhere over the 100, 150 range, and then doing that, it did take some investment. But my bill dropped to like $80. I mean, it almost dropped in half. It made a serious difference.
Yeah, and I'm very cheap. So, I save $80. And for me, that's a lot. And I love the fact that we're talking about this because even for me a couple of years ago, in my own house, we started doing that, changed all the lights to LED, and have become really conscious when I'm shopping, when I'm getting appliances that they say energy efficient. Just for other consumers that are going out. Is that something that you recommend? Should we really be focused on tools and appliances that have that mark that say energy efficient on them? I
mean, that's probably, and I preliminary state this, that as engineers, we make everything and every answer complicated. But indeed, it is a good thing to start looking at, but you also have to look at other things. For example, myself, it was my money. Indeed, that would be something I look at. Is it energy efficient? But the other thing that you do start to find, and you need to be careful of, is sometimes the energy efficiency, like a washing machine, may use less water and may be a little tougher to clean the clothes right. So then you may be forced to do 2 loads. So I'm not saying that's always the case, but there is indeed a balance. You know, you want to look for energy efficiency, but you don't want it to impede the efficiency of the process you're trying to do.
Right.
Because you have to redo it again. If you have a dishwasher that doesn't clean too well, you got to run it again. So you know, just be aware of that. I'm not saying go back to the old school ways, but find something that does fit that perfectly.
Okay, that's great. So listen, I'm going to switch. I want to talk to your father. Thank you for being here again. So one thing that I love is the fact that you have a background and knowledgeable of electric vehicles, well, because you drive one. That's number one. And number two, solar panels. So let's kind of dig a little deeper. Electric vehicles are very popular right now. They're in high demand. So what can we see? What does the future hold, and why should people really start paying attention to electric vehicles?
Thanks. That's a good question, Flo. Let me just introduce myself just a tiny bit. I'm not from Hudson. I happen to be from Pelham, but I do volunteer a lot in Pelham like Brett does in Hudson. I'm on the Conservation Commission and the Forestry Committee, and I have been for close to 20 years. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about what can you do at your home that's available today that will actually save you money and help the environment. And so the first thing I'd like to talk about, I know you talked about electric vehicles, but the first thing we did was install solar. We installed a 36-panel solar array. It's a ground-mounted array, not a roof-mounted array. I can go into the advantages of each, but anyway, I won't at this point. We turned that on in August of 2020, and so far we have paid zero for electricity in almost 2 years, and the power company owes us about $300.
Wow.
So you talk about printing money in your basement. Well, I look out the window in the back and I see a money printing machine.
There's a money tree out in their backyard.
There's a money tree. And everybody says, oh yeah, but it's so expensive. Well, it's relative. Ground-mounted arrays are a little more expensive than roof-mounted. This one cost about $1,000 a panel. So it was actually $38,000 to install it. But you get a 26% federal credit on your taxes. So that immediately takes off $10,000. So now you're down to $28,000. I looked at our electric bill, which was about $1,500 a year, and I'm going to get to the electric car. We were spending about $1,000 on gas. This is 2 years ago now. It wasn't $4 a gallon gas. It was like $2 1/4. Yeah. So when you added the $1,000 for the fuel for the automobile and $1,500 for electricity, that's $2,500 a year we were going to save. Well, 10 times 25 is 2,500 is 25,000. So we had about a 12-year payback.
Wow.
I felt that was a good investment, plus it just felt good to do something so significant for the environment. We basically took ourselves off the grid. That led to buying the electric vehicle, which I had planned all along. That's why we put such a big array. If you don't have an electric vehicle, you can do with a 24-panel array. And again, if you put it on your roof, it's a little less expensive. But we bought the electric vehicle last June, and I almost can't drive it because my wife never lets me get in it. She just loves it so much. I don't want to monopolize the show, but let me just say that.
No, let's dig deep into the electric vehicles because that's hot right now. They can't even make them fast enough. The demand is too high. Exactly.
I love the fact that my wife drives home. She looks up, the sun's out, she goes in the garage and plugs it in.
Yeah.
Our electric panels generate 10 kilowatts. The car uses 9.6 kilowatts. So 96% of the energy coming from those panels dumps right into the car, and we're driving on sunshine, literally. So now with gas prices at $4 a gallon, and with electricity, my last bill just said the rates are going up 12%, which of course I love because they're paying us more now. So if you did the 12-year payback calculation now with today's gas prices and today's electric rates, we're down to about a 10-year payback. And these panels are good for 40 years, so we'll have our money back in 10 years. And for the next 30 years, I probably won't be around, but somebody will get the benefit of having free electricity and to be able to drive their car. Maybe it'll be him.
I hope not.
So I think these are things that are readily available. They're not cheap. I'm not saying they're inexpensive, but then you don't have to be a millionaire to afford a $20,000 $8,000 solar panel that gives you 10-year payback.
Yeah. I think you brought up such a great point when you said they're readily available, because a lot of the research that I see now is that solar panels are going to make having electricity easily accessible for people who are far away from grids, right? But I think one thing people need to really know is when they're looking at, changing over and being more energy efficient, is this is not a short-term solution. They need to look at the long term, right? So although they're hearing, oh my God, it's $30,000, but this is a long-term solution. This is a long-term change of life, and the cost savings over time is just going to be incredible. So that's my takeaway from what you said. But one of the things when we hear about electric vehicles that I just want to touch upon before I come right back to you is charging stations. Some people probably get concerned, like, oh my God, how far can I drive? Where can I charge? So let's talk a little bit about that and what the future holds for charging stations right here in this state in New Hampshire.
I mean, it's a little bit of a joke, but the first thing I would say is, how big a problem is it charging your cell phone?
Right.
You go home at night, you plug it in, you get up in the morning, it's charged. It's the same thing with your car. You go home at night, you plug it in, you get up in the morning, it's charged. Our car has a range of 330 miles. Now, typically you don't charge it full because that's not good for the batteries. We charge it to about 90%, so that's about 300 miles. And you're not going to run it down to zero. Let's say you're going to run it to 50 miles. So you've got about a realistic 250-mile range. Tell me the last time you drove 250 miles in a day. So this range anxiety, as it's called, is just the anxiety over new technology. It's not really grounded in fact. The vast majority of people don't drive more than 50 miles a day, never mind 250. Who goes more than 25 miles each way to work? Very few people do. And we have a charger in our garage. My wife just pulls in, plugs the car in. It adds 40 miles of range to the car per hour. So if she comes home and just goes in the house for an hour, she's got 40 more miles of driving. And if you do go on a road trip, which we have, there are chargers, superchargers they're called, along all the highways, and even up through New Hampshire, we've charged up in the middle of the state. These superchargers are capable of putting 150 miles into your battery in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So you drive for 3 hours, you use up 150 miles if you're on the highway. You stop at a Dunkin' Donuts, you use the bathroom, you get a bagel, and in 20 minutes you've got another 150 miles to go. So what's the issue? And you're buying electricity, you're not buying gas, you're not paying $4 a gallon.
Yeah.
And I have to segue because the real issue that doesn't get talked about is engine efficiency. The reason electric vehicles are not going to be stopped, the reason gas engines are done, is because electric motors are 95% efficient. Gas engines are 35% efficient. If a gas engine were a good solution, you'd have a gas engine on your refrigerator. You'd have a gas engine in your basement driving your furnace. You'd have a gas engine on your pool pump. You'd have a gas engine on your air conditioner. None of those have gas engines. How come? Because electric motors are quieter, they're more efficient, and they're less expensive. So you say, well, then why do we have gas engines on cars? Simple. You can't plug them in.
Yeah.
But now the battery technology has evolved so far that you have batteries that you can charge and will drive you 330 miles. That's been the holdup all along, has been battery technology. We're never going back to gas engines. And if I can spend a little more of your time, Flo.
Yeah, go ahead.
The maintenance is non-existent. You don't have to be a techie to understand electric vehicles. There is a total of 3 parts. There's a motor, maybe 2 in our case, one for the front wheels, one for the back. There's a battery, and there's a computer, basically a laptop computer. That is your entire automobile. There is no engine, there are no valves, there are no pistons, there are no crankshafts, there's no oil, there's no fuel pump, there's no fuel injectors, there's no air cleaner, there's no
radiator.
Radiator, water pump. take all that away. In addition, take away the transmission. All that transmission fluid, all those 9-speed, 10-speed, 12-speed transmissions, it's all gone. The transmission in our car is non-existent. The motor goes from slow to fast.
Wow.
That's the end. Gas engines have to run at a particular RPM. They all like to run around 2,000 RPM for good energy, and they like to run around 4,000 PM to get power. You get efficiency and power at any speed out of an electric motor. So there's no maintenance. You don't have to do anything to these cars. Batteries are warranted for 150,000 miles, 8 years. Wow. At least that's what it is for our car. So you don't need brakes because you don't use brakes. You do what's called one-pedal driving. When you release the accelerator on an electric car, the motor turns into an alternator and generates electricity to put it back in the battery. Well, to do that, it slows the car down. So you just let off the accelerator, the car will decelerate to a stop at the intersection. You never touch the brake, and then you push the accelerator and you accelerate. Wow. So the only thing you're going to replace are tires. So if you don't think the savings between $4 a gallon gas and 20 cents a kilowatt hour electricity isn't enough, and it's huge, then subtract all your maintenance costs. I could go on, but there's no going back.
You have me sold. I'm already planning my trip to the car dealership.
Well, I'll leave with one last thing. Ford, this to me is really the point that drives it home. Ford's coming out with an F-150 electric pickup truck. Now, it's the most popular automobile on the planet. It's coming. They're coming out this year with an electric one. They stopped taking orders at 200,000 orders because that's a year's worth of production that they've already sold out.
Wow.
So, and look at your TV. I was just noticing the last couple of days. Virtually every ad for a car is an ad for an electric car. Try to find an ad for a gas car. Even the Hummer is electric. They've got an electric Hummer.
Yes,
Volkswagen's got electric cars. General Motors has. General Motors, the CEO of General Motors, Ms. Barra, just said that their executives' pay is going to be tied to the success of their electric vehicle division.
Wow.
So it's happening.
It's happening.
And there's no turning it around.
I don't think there's no going back. I think what we're seeing is the demand for innovation is going to continue to increase the demand for these tech vehicles, these electric vehicles, and who knows what else. You know, I joked earlier before we started recording about electric flying vehicles. So who knows the boundaries and the limits that we can take technology.
And I didn't even talk about performance and safety. This is not a Prius. This is 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds. You show me a gas car that can go 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, you're probably talking about a $100,000 Corvette. These electric cars are phenomenal. Safety-wise, the EPA safety test, they could not roll this car over because the battery's down low, it's under the seats, and the center of gravity is so low the car won't roll over.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on as to the advantages.
Here's my prediction. I think the electric vehicle advocacy groups are going to be calling you, and I see a new role for you as like a VP because you're selling.
If I were younger, I would be interested in that.
You're selling the market for that. So just to switch back to you, Selectman Gagnon.
Yes,
let's talk about the stuff that you've been working on right here in our town in terms of just how, Hudson be more energy efficient.
Sure, and thank you. And I'll state too that a lot of this isn't my work by any means. I'm bringing it to the forefront and speaking to you about it. Taking a little publicity, but by no means am I doing the work. There are some people in this town who have been doing work before my time, and I'm just simply here to publicize it. Like my father, to say that it is coming, that we are working in the background, and it is going to be a value add to all residents. To that point, we talked about the library LEDs. Right. We also have a program now. I think it's complete, where all the streetlights have now been turned LED.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the benefit with that not only is the savings, but the fixtures themselves are triggered by nighttime, so light sensitivity. Right. So they go on and off as they need. Again, so you're kind of lowering the demand depending on the time of year. They'll go on as they need. And then other than that, not really technology, but something beneficial for Hudson, which you may have seen last March on the warrant, was a Sustainability Capital Reserve Fund. And that was, I believe, developed by Linda Kipnis, rest her soul. And so she was big into sustainability initiatives, and that fund helped fund the library transformation with LEDs. And just this last March, we put, I believe, another $10,000 into that fund, and that will go to other projects. And as those projects save money, that money gets put back in. So you really start to see the sustainability go through between adding money, getting a project, saving money on said project, and putting it back in the fund. So not only are you helping the environment, you're helping our town, but you're helping the taxpayer's wallet. And that's what, let's be honest, a lot of people bottom line care about. Other than that, excuse me, and again, not so much technology, but something that should be mentioned is the Hudson Sustainability Committee is also working on what's called power aggregation. And again, I state this just because it may affect everyone in town. Town facilities currently work with other towns, so Hudson, Pelham, Litchfield. They all get in an agreement like an insurance contract and say, we're all going to collectively buy power from the cheapest person. And the town's been doing this for a while, and it's saved the town a lot of money on their power bills. Well, what they're trying to do now is at the state level, they've passed legislation that now allows residents to do the same. So Hudson Sustainability Committee and some of their top individuals, some very talented and smart people, are working with the state to help bring that to Hudson. Hudson's on the forefront of doing what's called power aggregation for residents and small businesses alone, which again, it will lower, hopefully, everyone's bills, but it'll also allow for choices in where that power comes from. You can pick if it's green energy or a mix of both. So I'm very excited to see how that progresses and look forward to that on the next warrant articles in the coming years.
Yeah, no, that's very exciting to hear about. I think, using green technology to make energy affordable for residents, I can't really imagine anyone complaining about that. So I'm really excited about that. So Paul, kind of going back to you, because we kind of discussed pools before the recording. So let's jump into tech that's out there when it comes to cost savings for, the water pumps for pools. Because one of the things I saw during COVID is that there were a lot of pools. Everybody, now they're like, hey, we're stuck at home. Right. We're gonna, go ahead and invest in a pool because we don't want our kids to drive us crazy. So I have a pool in my backyard. I'm really interested in talking about how much money you're saving, because I want to save too, and other people who have pools in this community, definitely you want to listen in and hear the cost savings that are available.
Thank you. This is one of those things that's sort of between LED light bulbs, which are, $1 to $10 each, and solar and electric cars, which instead of dollars are thousands of dollars. The pool pump is a couple $1,000s, maybe $1,500 because there's rebates. But what you're trying to get away from is the old-fashioned pool pump motor, which basically has two speeds, 0 and 100%. So you either flip the switch and it's off, or you turn the switch and it's running full blast. You don't need that on a pool. You want to circulate the water slowly so it gets filtered through your filter. And if you happen to be using chlorine, it's going over your chlorine sticks, or it's going through your if you have a salt pool, it goes through that device that turns the salt into chlorine. You just want to circulate it slowly. So what you really want to buy is a variable speed pump. And you can program the pump to not what speed it runs at, but how many gallons per minute. So you just adjust it to your pool. In our case, we have a 24,000 gallon pool. So I set it to 40 gallons a minute. If you do the math, 40 gallons a minute is 24,000 gallons in 10 hours. So I program it to run 10 hours a day. I program it to do 40 gallons a minute. That pump uses 400 watts. The old pump I had was about 1,600 watts. So, and I had to run the old pump just as much because you got to keep circulating the water to get the chlorine in. You can't just let the water sit there or the chlorine evaporates with the sun. So you have to run the pump. And with the old pump, it was either on or off. So I'm saving 3/4 of the electricity. And for us, our most expensive electric months prior to solar were July and August, because you had the pool pump going and you had air conditioning going occasionally, although we only have one window air conditioner, so we're not big air conditioners. Right. We won't jump in the pool if it's hot. But we were able to save 75% of the electricity. And as I said, it's, I want to say they're around $2,000, the one I bought, and there's $300 or $400 rebate. So it's not a huge expense like solar panels or an automobile, and it has a good payback. So there's a lot that the public, you folks out there watching, there's a lot you can do. We don't have to wait for a miracle to happen to solve the environmental problem. We all need to contribute to it.
No, I agree. So as we wrap up here, like, let's really talk about what the future of green technology, looks like right here in New Hampshire. What do you think is working well right now, Brett?
So I'll kind of turn that around a little bit and tie it into what we talked about today. Right. So something that I was beneficial in doing, or that I enjoyed doing, was I actually took my father's Tesla with him involved, and we took the Hudson Police Department for a drive.
Wow.
I set up an event about a couple months ago, maybe last year, and Captain Bianchi came out, and we actually had a fun little event. We put $200,000 muscle cars next to his Tesla, and we had a safe environment that we had signed off on. And what I did is I allowed them to sit in the passenger seat of these $100,000 race cars and feel the power, get the testosterone going, hear the thunder of the exhaust.
Right.
And then, you see an engineering kind of, forgive me, nerd sitting in the front seat of a white-on-white Tesla, and you see this, police officer in all his gear and two muscle head car owners in the back seat, all crammed in, and I can see them from down the road. I'm watching them, and they're all kind of playing with it, and they take off, and they all get out of the car, and they're shocked. And so I explained the story because it was a fun event. It really was a fun event. And even to myself, I thought, you know what? It was an honor that the police station and Captain Bianchi even came out to listen to me. I mean, as a selectman, I know they have some kind of need to sometimes talk with me and whatnot. Yeah. But I claim myself as a tree hugger. Maybe he's just doing it because he has to. Yeah. But no, I give them a ton of credit, because after that, they ask follow-up questions. They talked to me, they looked into different things and what it's turning into, and it's not gonna be tomorrow. But the Captain Bianchi and the Chief of Police have consistently said now that they are aware that electric vehicles will be part of their fleet in the future, whether that's 2 years, 3 years, 10 years. They are doing research. They are actively calling other police stations in the country and asking how they're doing it. So I think we will see electric police cars in the near future, and for all the benefits that my father spoke about individually. On top of that, even today, as we all know, last March, the police station renovation has passed for something in the ballpark of $6 million. Well, this is where it becomes interesting, because we all know of the economy kind of shooting up and the cost of prices shooting up. They're not only looking at electric police cars, again, in the future, but what systems do they need? If they're gonna build a new building now, let's pre-plan. And not only is it pre-planning, but if they can include things like solar arrays on their roof of their carports, or charging stations that, even if they don't have electric cars, they can put those charging stations in. They can get governmental kickbacks to help pay for that, and maybe even pay for other parts of the station that the expense has gone up. So it becomes this big, sustainable project where they're seeing that they can integrate these technologies, not only for cost savings and for the environment, which is quite important, but again, everyone's bottom dollar is their bottom line. Right. That it may actually help to get the police station fully built with the latest technology. And so that, to me, is extremely exciting, and I'm so honored and pleased that they're really taking it seriously and looking at what they can do for their future. Yeah,
I mean, that's fantastic to hear, because that was actually going to be my next question, and you actually answered it, is how is the police department right now, while they're kind of, going through the build, how are they going to implement green technology? So, thank you for making them aware, and, and kudos to our community for taking steps to be, forward-thinking when it comes to this area of technology. What about you, Paul? What is New Hampshire doing well right now in this area of sustainability?
I'm maybe going to answer that question backwards. I want to discourage this idea that all we have to do is plant trees.
Right.
Because you hear people, you hear electric, power companies, gas companies saying, oh, well, for every gallon you buy, we're planting a tree. The state of New Hampshire is the second most treed state in the nation, okay? That means we have more trees per acre than every state in the country except one. Maine. Okay, so keep that in mind. We have a lot of trees. We have a tiny population, less than 1.5 million people. There's 10 million people in Manhattan alone. We've got only 1.5 million people. So we have a huge number of trees and a tiny number of people. Do you know what percentage of the carbon generated in New Hampshire is absorbed by those trees? Only 25%.
Wow.
So you're not going to solve this problem. That's not to say planting trees is a bad idea, but it's not going to ever get to the level of solar panels or electric cars or even pool pumps. You have to stop generating carbon dioxide. You can't expect the planet to absorb it. And if I can just make 2 more points, there's so much we could talk about.
And you're welcome to come back. This is a conversation.
Maybe we have to, because
Yeah.
we didn't talk about geothermal for people who are building new houses.
Yeah, let's schedule another time to talk
Let's
about
do
that.
that.
That's
And
a
I'll
whole
hold
new
off.
topic. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think this is a good conversation. And Brett, you mentioned something that people also need to really realize is that there are incentives, money incentives, tax credits, incentives to go green.
Absolutely.
So-
And there's even companies out there like middlemen who are working with the government, helping with these incentives and helping individuals who don't know what to do get things done, whether it's insulation, windows, LED lighting, and so forth. So if you Google it, there are companies that can be that assistance you need.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a hot topic and we're out of time, but we're going to reschedule and get deeper into other areas of green technology. But Brett and Paul Gagnon, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Flo.
Exciting show, great way for our residents and people in New Hampshire to understand a little bit more about green technology because trillions of dollars are being spent in this sector, and I don't see it changing anytime soon. So thank you for watching this episode of Get Tech Smart. Stay tuned for more.